Well, as a result of the pandemic, Euphoria gives us a much quieter and intimate episode than expected, but it may also just be their best episode yet. We got it all on UHM. Take off your sneakers. Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for a special episode of Euphoria. This is the first of two. Of course, it's called Trouble Don't Always Last, and I know I haven't reviewed Euphoria individually. In the past, I only reviewed Season 1. Maybe moving forward, I will, but this was just one of those things where, because there are two specials and they're so separate from each other, the second one isn't coming out till January, I figured that I might as well just review both of them individually, regardless of how they were going to turn out, regardless of what they were. I just wanted to give my review on it, and I'm very happy I did, because this is an episode of television that I have a ton of shit to say about. I mean, this is one of those episodes where I didn't even think we were really going to get it initially. It's one of those things that kind of just came out of nowhere, because they were supposed to be, like, filming Season 2, like, literally a couple days before the pandemic happened. They were all set to go. Like, Kelvin Harrison Jr. was cast. They were ready to go when it comes to the show, and unfortunately, because of unforeseen circumstances like the pandemic, they just had to delay everything, but they still wanted to do an episode, and so we have these two, and thank God we do, because I'll just be honest right now, if the next episode that we get is any indication, these two episodes of Euphoria are going to be one of the greatest gifts we've had, and I think one of the only benefits we've had during the pandemic, because this is absolutely, I think, the best episode of this show yet. Not only is this such a different kind of episode from Euphoria, I truly do think it may just be the best episode we've had yet. There's a lot to really dissect here. There's a lot that I really do want to talk about, but I think we're just going to fully jump into it, because I really do want to talk about what made this episode so great. So I think the first thing to really talk about is just what this episode was all about, because we really did not know going into this what this was going to be. We knew that part one was going to focus on Rue, and we knew the second one is going to focus on Jules. That's not coming to, like, January, though. We knew it was going to involve Christmas somehow, and I don't think any of us were prepared for what we really got here. This entire episode, aside from, like, the first scene, is almost entirely set in one location. It's almost entirely like a stage play of sorts, and it's basically just one conversation between Rue and between the character of Ali. And on paper, that does not sound particularly interesting, but considering what we end up getting here, I really do think it was one of the best possible things that could happen. It kind of reminds me of the Fly episode in Breaking Bad, an episode that was not supposed to happen originally. That was an episode that they made because of the writer's strike. They needed to make something that was as cheap as possible, because of the fact that they really did not have the budget to do anything bigger, so they could only utilize, like, Bryan Cranston and, Aaron Paul, and they put them in one location, and that was kind of it. And that's very similar with this episode. You have two actors here throughout the entire thing, and I mean, Jules is in the beginning, but aside from that, that's basically it. And I think I just really want to unpack what we got here, because especially when it comes to the relation between Rue and Ali, this has not been a huge focal point of the show. Ali's popped in every so often. I think he was in, like, 3 or 4 episodes in Season 1, but he was someone that every time he came on, I very much enjoyed him, but he did not leave the impact that I think he really did in this episode, and that's because I think Ali in this episode comes at a point where Rue really needs him the most, because she is very much using again, as we were worried about in Season 1, and he is someone who's in a very similar place. You know, we find out a lot about him in this episode, that he was recovered for like 12 years and then all of a sudden decided to relapse again for a whole year. And he did recover from it, but it really did take a toll on things. And you can see that he very much does sympathize with her. But what I really like about Ali is that not only is he the person that understands Rue the most, he's not going to take shit from her either. He's not just going to let her, he's not just gonna let her rebel. He's not just gonna let her overdose and things like that. He really is going to do everything in his power to make sure that she gets over this, to make sure that she becomes a better person from all this. And I really did like getting to see that, and contrasting that with someone like Rue, who is so deeply not well in this episode. You can tell she is just not in a good mental headspace, but is insisting throughout the episode, like, no, I'm okay, I'm doing fine, like, you don't need to worry about me. It just felt like a very raw portrayal of substance abuse and what can happen when people are so addicted to something, but also very much tapping into the fact that Jules is also very much a drug for Rue. I talked about this in season 1. The way she looks at Jules is not very healthy, and that's something that Ali really gets her to recognize, is that yes, Jules is someone that she clearly does care for, but the way that she was doing it, it almost was like she was only going to kick the habit if she was with Jules. If she wasn't with Jules, then she was going to continue to do what she was doing. And you kind of have to wonder, like, why is that? Why can't she just do it on her own? Why is Jules someone that is taking the place of her drug addiction? And I thought that was a very interesting sort of debate that they had, where Ali really talks to her about how she really does feel towards Jules. Is this just a crush? Is this just a friendship? Or has she been rushing things? And I think we kind of came to the conclusion that her and Jules right now is just not healthy for her. She's not in a place where they can actually be together. She's not in a place where they can have that relationship that Jules really does deserve. She's not in a place where she can be that loving person she wants towards Jules. And that's why that first scene is so heartbreaking. That scene in the beginning where we see these two just happily in bed together and Jules going off to school. Like, they're never gonna have that reality until Rue is in the better mental headspace. And I think that's something we did definitely realize over the course of this episode. But I really did like how, even though Rue starts off very cold and, again, trying to reassure Ali that she's okay, eventually she does open up more to him about how she is very scared and she legitimately doesn't know how to go on without her sobriety. She doesn't know what a life like that entails, and I really did like seeing that. But also the way that Ali starts to compare this to other things, like, for example, what he talks about with Nike and with race, how, people, he sees, like, this banner of people saying, like, Black Lives Matter and things like that, but in reality, that's not really the case. They're just doing it, for promotional reasons, and you see how he circles that back to addiction, where addicts will constantly say, like, I'm okay, but they're really just saying that in an effort to persuade the person and make them feel better, when in reality that's not really the case. And I thought that was a very interesting sort of analogy that Ali had here, and that's one of the best things about this episode, is that they really do talk about a range of topics, but I feel like the focus is always on addiction and then the idea of recovery. I think that's very much what the focus of this episode is, and I really did enjoy that a lot, because again, you get the sense that Ali really is trying to be like a therapist towards Rue, even though he's not actually her therapist. She tells him multiple times, like, don't call, like, social services or something like that, and he says, like, I'm not your therapist, like, I'm just someone that's gone through a similar situation, and so he very deeply understands her, and he's really just the person that's come in, I think, at the perfect time for someone like Rue, and I really did like getting to see that here. And again, I think all that stuff is really well done. But the other part of this episode, like I said, that really struck me is just Ali as a character, because not only do we find about the relapsing, but we also find out about this whole family that he has when he steps outside to take this call, and I'm pretty sure he's talking to his wife and kids. It's a really big moment, because you got the sense that he's been away from them for a long time, and just hearing their voices brings such a smile to his face, and how he's really embracing just kind of the simple things in life. And I think that's something that Rue also needs to do. She wants everything right now. She wants to have this great relationship with Jules. She wants to move on. She wants her family to look at her in the eye and just, she just, there's so much stuff that she wants at this point. But with Ali, this is someone who really is just embracing the little things that he has, these relationships that he can cling on to, even if they're not that solid. Just the fact he's able to hear their voices, it just brings such, you can just see how enamored he is by this. You can just see how overjoyed he is to hear their voices. And it was just such a beautiful moment in that way. And Colman Domingo, oh my God. I mean, look, Zendaya is amazing in this episode, as always, but... and she always does like a great job, but Colman Domingo, I thought, ran with this episode for me. He just did such an incredible job in playing someone that still is very much an addict and still is very much recovering, but he's content knowing that he is on a journey to recovery. He's content knowing that, you know, things are eventually going to get better for him. It goes back to the conversation that he has with the lady that works at the diner, and she talks about how, you know, she really wanted to be in a relationship, but she had to prioritize her sobriety over it. And though it was hard, she kept a quote from her grandmother in the back of her mind that trouble doesn't always last. And I think that's something that Rue also needs to very much think about, is that things aren't always going to be this way. It's hard now, but that's not always going to be the case. And I really did like getting to see that here. But then diving deeper into the morality of who Ali really is, where, you know, Rue talks about this incident where, you know, she stole drugs from her, you know, she stole money from her mother and things like that, and ended up hitting her in the face, and how she held up like that shard of glass and said that she would kill her, and how this is something that has deeply haunted her ever since. But Ali, again, reassures her that, like, I've done very similar things. You know, he had this very abusive father, and who was, you know, abusive towards his mother and things like that, and how, you know, his addiction really brought out the worst in him, that he literally ended up hitting his wife. And this really broke him in that way. And I think the show did a good job of showing that, you know, addicts are very often stigmatized in that way. They're seen as these very broken and evil individuals, but really, to their core, they are hurting in some way. And yes, it obviously is on them if they're going to recover or not, but it's the fact that they want to recover. That's what is so important. And when Rue eventually breaks down and talks about how she just wants her family to remember her as, like, the person who tried really hard to be someone that she couldn't, I think that's a really important moment. It's the first time she really, I think, is open and honest with someone and isn't trying to, you know, put on a better version of herself. She's being very raw with him and basically tells him that she doesn't really plan to survive for all that much longer. Like, she doesn't think she's gonna last that long. She doesn't think that she's gonna be able to do what she's doing for much longer either. And again, it's a very effective moment in that way. And when Ali is telling her, like, believe in poetry and things like that, I just think it's a very sobering moment for her, because it's what Rue really needed to hear at that moment. The idea that this isn't gonna last, again, like, this isn't going to last forever, and she has a family that is going to be happy with the fact that she has recovered. But, you know, she's also worried because she has the younger sister in Gia who might potentially, you know, fall into similar habits. So you can see why she is so worried about that stuff. But I think Ali, you know, we get the sense at the end of this episode that he really is someone that not only is very similar to her, but he's really going to try to help her through this difficult process. And I really liked the way things wrapped up there. I just thought their whole conversation was so riveting. I thought it really did a great job of showing how Rue is slowly getting on the path towards recovery. It's going to take a while. Like, I think she's definitely going to have some very dramatic episodes, you know, when we get to the rest of the show. But she is going to slowly realize that this is going to be a difficult process, and it might take a while for her to really get there, but she needs to remember that this isn't going to be forever. You know, if she wants to do it, it will happen. And I think that's a very inspiring message for many addicts and really anyone that has ever gone through some sort of ongoing situation that they felt was never going to end. I think that's just a very good message, and I think that was overall just a really great way to end this episode, with her, you know, staring out the window, not knowing how things were going to turn out. I just really liked the way things ended up wrapping up here. And I think that's part of what makes Rue such a great character, is that she's someone that is deeply flawed and has done a lot of things in her life, but she's someone that knows that she's done wrong. She's someone that is very vulnerable in that way because she wants to get that help. You know, she very desperately wants to, but it's very difficult for her to do so. And I think the conversation that Ali has with her, where, you know, he's telling her how difficult of a process it is and how he ended up bouncing back himself, but he's on a path where he cares so much and he wants to do something about it. Again, I think that really is going to speak to where Rue is going to end up going as a character in season 2. I think she's going to be in a place where she's very desperate to kick this habit, but it's going to be difficult for her to do so, and I think that's going to be a really well done arc for her for sure. I'm very excited to see where she ends up going overall. And that's really everything that goes down this episode story-wise. Like I said, it's a very simplistic episode overall, but I gotta talk about the things that really did work in this episode. Sam Levinson's directing, for one, is extraordinary here. The way he's able to make this conversation feel so riveting, but also feel so satisfying, I think, for so many people, is really remarkable. This is one of those episodes where you may have never seen episode Euphoria. You can still turn this on and you'll be able to understand what Rue is going through. You'll be able to understand why this is so difficult for her. Even if you haven't actually seen the way things have played out between Rue and Jules, you get the sense that this is not a healthy relationship, and how it is only hurting Rue rather than helping her. And I think the show did a really good job with that. But also when it comes to the character of Ali, this really speaks to Levinson's writing in this episode, I thought was also very well done, because he took someone like Ali that already was a good character and made him even better, because he just showed how similar him and Rue really are, and how these two are on a similar path in that way, and they're on a similar playing field. And I really did like getting to see that here. I think that was definitely one of the best things about this episode, is really seeing the bond between those two, but again, being a very inspiring message for those that were addicts, and I think that's really great. But what's even more impressive to me, like I said in the beginning, is that this was not supposed to be an episode originally. This is just something that Levinson came up with because he wanted to be able to film something, you know, whatever it was, in place of season 2. He didn't care, you know, if it was these he needed to do something a little bit more intimate. He needed to do something a bit more small scale. But I think this was absolutely the right kind of thing to do, because this was a very needed conversation, and I think for some could be seen as like a source of therapy. I mean, it really covers everything here, and I really did appreciate that about this episode, and the way he's able to make what was really just supposed to be like one quick scene feel so impactful and just feel so important to the show. I mean, it honestly feels like if this episode wasn't there, the show isn't as impactful. And for Levinson to be able to do that over an episode that, again, was not originally conceived in this way, I just think is absolutely remarkable. I don't know how he was able to pull it off, but he really did deliver this to perfection. And I really just loved everything about his writing here. Again, the analogies to things like race and corporations, and the way that media will lie to you in a way to make something feel more enticing, in a way to get you to buy their product, is again similar to how addicts will constantly lie about their mental state when in reality they are not doing well, and when in reality they are still very erratic, they are still heavily addicted. And I really did like the way that played out overall. I thought that was very well done, and just again, just everything about the writing here, even going all the way back to the beginning where Rue is fantasizing about a more a better life with Jules, in a sense, it feels very imaginative. It feels very fantastical. It almost feels like, you know, it's a part of a different show. I thought that was something that was just very well communicated in the writing. Just amazing stuff overall from Levinson. The cinematography, though, in this episode, I also really did appreciate a lot, because the diner itself is a location where you really do kind of feel like you're there with Rue. It's a very intimate experience in that way. We don't really leave that diner throughout most of this episode. It's not until they get in that car that they actually do leave. And I thought that was the dark, you know, sort of the very dark and raw feeling of the diner contrasted with the beginning of the episode that's very glossy and, again, almost, you know, fairy tale like. I thought was really well done, and I really did like the cinematography here a lot. I thought the score was also really great. Labyrinth always does an amazing job when it comes to the score in the show, and that's still very much the case here. I just love what he ends up contributing to the show always. And again, the editing of the show, I think, was just, again, is something that we have to talk about, because on the behind-the-scenes feature, Levinson brought up how this was originally supposed to be like a 3-minute scene, and he expanded it to an entire episode, and I never felt like this episode dragged. I just felt it kept building and building, and it was an episode where by the time it ended, I just wanted more from it. I wanted to see what else they could deliver on. I wanted to see what else they could bring to the table, and I feel like any episode that's able to do that, let alone an episode that was not supposed to originally air, I just think is absolutely remarkable. Guys, I think I've gone into enough. This is an episode of television that I did not know I needed as much as I did. It's a great reminder just how great of a show Euphoria really is. It's a fantastic message for addicts and people that are trying to recover, but also does a great job of furthering the characters of Rue, but especially Ali. It gave us a deeper glimpse into this character who I really do hope moving forward is a series regular on the show. I hope we're able to get more conversations with those two, because they just have such amazing chemistry throughout this entire episode, and I hope we're able to get more moving forward. I don't know what else we're going to get in terms of the second Euphoria special, but if it is anything on this level, we are really in for something special. This absolutely, I think, is the best episode of the show so far. It's one of the best episodes of television that I have seen all year, and I'm definitely going to give this episode, Euphoria, the Trouble Don't Always Last, overall an A+. I honestly can't believe I love this episode as much as I did. I went into this thinking this would be a really solid sort of way to tie us over until the next episode. I did not think this episode would be probably the best episode of the show. I did not think I would be saying that coming out of this, but I very much am, and I'm very happy it turned out the way that it did. But either way, guys, to my review of this week's episode of Euphoria. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to review Euphoria individually when Season 2 actually does come out, but I will absolutely be reviewing the second special episode, whatever that ends up being. We don't have a trailer for it or anything. We just know it's going to involve Jules and Christmas, and I guess we'll see what that ends up becoming. But either way, I'm very happy I was able to review this episode. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.